Our Wild West experience started here in Scottsdale, Arizona, on the outskirts of Phoenix, with its boardwalk artworks, craft shops, restaurants, bars and cafes, all of which are connected by a free trolley service. Nearby is the Desert Botanical Garden, which since 1939 has been the home of one of the finest and most diverse collections of succulent plants, including rare, threatened and endangered species from around the southwest. It's the only botanical garden in the world to focus solely on desert plants. A desert is defined as an area that receives less than 10 inches of rain a year. The Botanical Garden sits on 145 acres, and there are more than 50,000 plants in its collection. There are 5 themed trails that exhibit cactus and succulent species from around the world. This display is made of glass. The saguaro cactus, the typical cowboy cactus, is found only in this very small area and often contains holes which are the nest of the cactus wren, the state bird of Arizona. Hummingbirds can also be found in the garden. That night we all went out for dinner at the Pinnacle Peak Steakhouse, a good opportunity to get to know our 20-strong tour group. Bolstered by cups of coffee and ice cream, we climbed into the Navajo Reservation in Utah on Interstate 17. We stopped for lunch at Cameron, a former Indian trading post. The gift shop sold handmade Indian crafts. The old bridge crosses a mini Grand Canyon. We then drove through the Painted Desert. A sandstorm was blowing up as we approached Monument Valley, which is 5,000 feet above sea level, 1,000 feet higher than Ben Nevis. We spent the night at Goulding's Lodge, in a fantastic setting at the foot of steep cliffs. When we awoke next morning, the sandstorm had blown itself out, and we could see a view that had been invisible the previous night. After breakfast, we piled into open-sided jeeps. We rolled down the sides against the bitter wind and went first to an Indian hogan, the traditional home of the Navajo people. Inside, we were given a demonstration of carding, spinning, weaving and flour grinding as we looked round the inside of the hogan. One of the group had her hair dressed in the Indian style. Then we drove across the plain to the viewpoint overlooking Monument Valley itself, believed by the Navajo to be the centre of the earth. Here you can see the left and right mittens, just two of a wide panorama of unusual rock monoliths. Temperatures in the valley range from 25 degrees Fahrenheit in winter to 90 degrees in summer. Rainfall averages 8 inches a year. We descended into the valley, a tribal park, surrounded by these incredible formations, which are formed by wind-blown sand scouring the soft sandstone rock. They stand between 400 and 1,200 feet tall. The Navajo Indians are skilled jewelry makers. They learnt the art of silverwork from the Spaniards and sell their jewelry at these stalls in the desert. The scenery is familiar to anyone who has watched cowboy movies, and while we were there, a crew was filming the new version of The Lone Ranger with Johnny Depp. The first film to be made here was Stagecoach in 1938, and other famous films were How the West Was Won, Back to the Future 3, and Thelma and Louise. By now we'd rolled the sides up as we parked alongside the amazing balanced rock. We came to regret rolling the sides up as we left the valley covered in fine red sand. Moving on from Monument Valley, we drove across the desert, through the aptly named Mexican Hat, and on past Church Rock. We made a stop at Wilson Arch, the first arch of the tour. Created entirely by sand and wind erosion, this arch is believed to have been 70,000 years in the making. Made of a rock called Entrada sandstone, the arch is 91 feet wide and 46 feet high. It's named after Joe Wilson, a local pioneer. We arrived for a 3-night stay in Moab and went straight out for dinner on the banks of the Colorado. After dinner we boarded a boat for a sunset river cruise. We were all given blankets to wrap ourselves up against the chill night air. As we sailed up the river, we saw all sorts of strange rock formations, some of which were weirdly familiar, like E.T. here, and the Old Man of the Rock. After dark, the rocks were illuminated as we sailed back to base for a welcome hot chocolate. Next day we went by road up the side of the same valley, but managed to drive further upstream than the boat could reach. Then it was on to Arches National Park, which is just 10 minutes from Moab. It's on the Moab fault line. Water, ice, extreme temperatures and underground salt movement are responsible for the sculpted rock scenery in the park. This may once have been an arch, which has since collapsed. From the car park we took the 1-mile walk along Park Avenue. Steps lead down a short hill to a smooth rock canyon bottom. We were surrounded by extraordinary sandstone rock formations created by erosion and weathering. Usually slow, but occasionally dramatic falls cause sudden changes to the landscape. At our feet was the sparse desert vegetation, such as this juniper. This is a wood arch. On our way back to the bus, we saw the beginnings of a new rock arch. Next came an easy walk around the base of Balanced Rock. Delicate Arch, also known as Cowboy Chaps, on the eastern edge of the park, is used on the Utah number plates. The final walk of the day was the Windows Loop. First came the north window. Then we climbed to Turret Arch, where we took pictures back to the bus. Higher up, we could see north and south windows together. Within the park, there are over 2,000 arches, ranging from 3 feet to 300 feet wide. This view gives a good idea of the size of some of the arches. The following day we went to Canyonlands National Park, a wilderness of rock at the heart of the Colorado Plateau. Water and gravity, the area's prime architects, cut flat layers of sedimentary rock into hundreds of canyons, mesas, butts, fins, arches and spires. A butte is a rock outcrop higher than it is wide. A mesa is one wider than it is high. We took the half-mile loop trail to Mesa Arch, which is perched high on the canyon rim atop a 500-foot vertical drop. From here we could see the Colorado River 2,000 feet below. From the Green River outlook we could see the White Rim, an almost continuous sandstone bench 1,200 feet below us. Another 1,000 feet below that is the Green River. On the way back we stopped at the neck to look down on the Schaefer Trail, one of the many 4x4 tracks in the park. That afternoon, a couple of 4-wheel drive Hummers arrived to take us on our off-road adventure to the worryingly named Hell's Revenge Trail. The trail is mainly over what's described as slick rock, although in fact it had enormous amounts of grip. Thank goodness. Alarmingly, it's a 2-way road. The route owes more to direction than to terrain. The Slick Rock Cycle Trail passes through the same area. We stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the Colorado River and realized that we were now directly above the river where we had been on the night cruise. These Hummers are a bit tricky to get in and out. We headed back in convoy. It's always better for the guy in front to check for oncoming traffic rather than to find out the hard way yourself. All too soon, we were back on the tarmac road and back to the hotel for the night. On the road again, morning coffee was at a truck stop where we had to indulge Chris's passion for big trucks, and boy were they big. She even charmed a couple of drivers into letting her have a look inside the cabs. Next we drove high into the snow to the Big Rock Candy Mountain. Yes, it is a real place, where the rocks are various pastel shades, and a nearby spring actually produces pale yellow water. The Lemonade Spring. Then we came to Red Canyon, whose name needs no explanation at all. The tunnel through the rock led us on to Bryce Canyon. Here we took 2 walks, both along the rim trail. The first started at Sunrise Point overlooking the Queen's Garden. Other trails, including the Horse Trail, go down into the canyon. The park's unique geology includes a series of horseshoe-shaped amphitheatres and other strange shapes carved from the coloured limestone rock. The snow that had fallen the previous day added a new dimension to the fabulous views. This first short walk ended at Sunset Point, and then we drove to Bryce Point. From here there are the most amazing views out over the Bryce Amphitheatre, with its tens of thousands of hoodoos. There are 2 definitions of the word hoodoo. The first, a pillar of rock, usually a fantastic shape left by erosion. The second, to cast a spell. In Bryce Canyon, hoodoos cast their spell on all who visit. The national park stands on the edge of a plateau. Over millions of years, water rushing off the plateau carved gullies at its edge. These gullies gradually widened into canyons, and fins of rock became exposed. The fins were then eroded by water freezing in the vertical cracks, and finally sculpted by wind, to leave the incredible hoodoos which we can see now. Over 1.5 million people visit the park every year. The walk ended at Inspiration Point. Our first stop today is at Checkerboard Mesa, which is made of Navajo sandstone. The horizontal lines are found in all sedimentary rock, but the vertical lines are less common and are shallow cracks caused by stress and erosion. Then we went down a twisting road to the bottom of Zion Canyon for a completely different day. First we got onto the shuttle bus, which took us to the start of the Riverside Walk. Alongside the trail we came across dozens of ground squirrels. A strange noise drew our attention to the side of the path, where we spotted a couple of wild turkeys. Eventually the trail came to the ford at the start of the Narrows walk, but not having wellies with us, this was as far as we could go. We retraced our steps and went to the lodge for lunch. We went across the road to the little footbridge over the river. Chris wandered along the flat riverside path, filming the magnificent canyon scenery with all the different colours of rock. Meanwhile, Linda and I set off up the steeper Emerald Pools trail with the still camera. Suddenly, at the side of the track, we found a couple of deer quietly grazing. The pools were certainly not emerald. When we got back together, we went back over the bridge and saw just what beavers could do to a tree. We went past the hitching rails and back to the lodge, where the bus was waiting for us. After an early start next morning, we stopped for coffee at Canab, where Linda bought a cowboy shirt, and they still have covered wagons, drugstore Indians, the tobacconist equivalent of a barber's pole, and even a stagecoach. Then we moved on to Glen Canyon, where the bridge and dam span the Colorado River. They were both completed in 1963. We crossed the bridge on foot to take pictures of the dam on one side and the river far below on the other. At 710 feet is the world's second longest single-span concrete arch bridge. At the visitor centre you can pick up all sorts of information about the dam, which created Lake Powell, the second largest lake in the USA. We had lunch at Lake Powell Resort in Wahite Bay. Leaving Linda immersed in her ice cream, we wandered around the gardens filled with local desert plants. There were dozens of houseboats moored on the lake. We walked down to the jetty and got onto a boat for a 1.5-hour cruise on the lake, which is 186 miles long. First we went up close to the dam and then headed for Antelope Canyon, which is located on the Navajo Reservation. This narrow canyon with its steep walls of Navajo sandstone took its name from the herds of pronghorn antelope which used to live here many years ago. It's famous not only for the varied colours of the rock, but also for its many slot canyons. We returned to Wahite Bay and on to Flagstaff. Up at 6:45 next morning and off to the Grand Canyon heliport. Appetites whetted by the sight of the helicopters lined up on the pad. First it was photographs, then the time finally came to board. Linda got on first to grab the co-pilot's seat. Then it was up, up and away. After 25 minutes, the helicopter returned to the airport. Wow, what an experience! Finally, she picked up her photograph and certificate. From the heliport, we drove to Bright Angel Lodge on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Here the canyon is 18 miles wide, the widest it gets anywhere. There's a 2-day return mule trek down the Bright Angel Trail, but right now there's a 5-year waiting list. Everyone wants the picture taken at Bright Angel, even the locals, though really it was just looking for a chance to pinch our lunch. There are Indian villages at the bottom of the canyon 1 mile below, where it's 30 degrees warmer than on the rim. Everything is delivered to the villagers by pack mule, which take years to train, but then do the journey unaccompanied. The canyon is 277 miles long and is entirely in Arizona. The north rim in the distance is 1,000 feet higher than where we are on the south. The rocks are Navajo sandstone, and the canyon was carved through them by the Colorado River. This is still ongoing, at a rate of 1 inch every 100 years. After a couple of hours, we moved on to Grand Viewpoint. The man in blue has found a lizard basking in the sun. The final stop of the day was at Desert View, the only place on the rim from which you can see the Colorado River. Here there's a 21-meter high stone structure built in 1932 to resemble a Pueblo Indian watchtower. Inside the tower are murals by a Hopi Indian artist. From the top of the tower there are even better views of the canyon and the surrounding plateau. On our final morning we drove through Oak Creek Canyon to Sedona, a former pioneer town now described as America's New Age capital. The beautiful red rock formations are the town's trademark and have been used as the background for several feature films and many TV adverts. One particular rock was the inspiration for Charles Schulz's most famous cartoon character, Snoopy. Sedona is a haven for artists, and throughout the town are large bronze sculptures. On the way out of town we passed Lucille Ball's old house, and then onto a parking area for views of Sedona's amazing rock formations. There was a final opportunity to visit one of the Wild West's many desert restrooms at the end of our 1,970-mile journey.